What is up guys, and welcome back to the channel. This video we're going to take a really deep dive into the BeanGo Cube X coffee roaster. Now full disclosure, I have been sent this machine for free to test to show you guys what I think. I'm not being paid by the company, they just want genuine honest reviews and actually some feedback, because this will be launched on Kickstarter at some stage and they want to perfect it before it gets there. And if you've watched my videos, you know I'm going to tell you the bad stuff just so they can improve it, and then hopefully by the time it's released, it's going to be perfect. And I do get sent offers to review and check out equipment almost every day, and I only say yes to products that appeal to me. And this little roaster certainly has some features that's raising my eyebrows. So grab yourself a coffee, because we're about to take a deep dive into the BeanGo Cube X coffee roaster. So like I said, I'm going to show you guys the main features of this roaster. I am going to point out a couple of things that aren't perfect, but that's the idea of this video, so that you guys can see what you're either going to get or what the company thinks is right, and we're maybe going to point out some issues before you buy one. Now, as a really cool comparison, we do have two different roasters here. I've been using the Kaleido M2 for quite some time now. I've been using this guy for about 3 months now, and so far I've definitely found some benefits and some maybe little issues that they're having along the way. We like to call them opportunities for growth. So I'm going to show you guys what I think. We are of course going to roast some coffee. Before I do that, I'm going to show you one thing that I find really cool about this. Now before we go any further, there is an app that you have to use and connect to Wi-Fi. Once you're connected, you can jump into the app. Now, this is a great little app. It does work quite well. We're not going to turn it on just yet, but I did want to show you this before we go any further. This is a really good feature. However, there is a slight downside to it that we're going to chat about later. So like I said, I do want to start this thing up and show you guys how it works, but before that, I'm going to play with it and start pulling things apart, because they actually encourage maintenance far more than any other home roaster I have seen. So, no gloves needed because it's still cold. But you can actually undo this without any tools at all. So it has these little quick fixes on the side. Now with the roaster turned off and remove these 4 side bolts, you can open that up, you take the drawer out, and you take the little chaff drawer out. You can pull the face off, as easy as that. And then go even deeper. So now we've undone 4 little bolts by hand, no tools needed, and we can access the internals of the roaster. So as you can see, we've gotten all the way into the drum, and with the tool that's supplied, you can even undo this nut here and slide out the entire drum. Now this might not appeal to absolutely everyone, but if you've been in roasting for long enough, you will know how important it is to keep your roaster clean. Especially all of these little holes here, make sure there's no blockages, so you get a nice consistent heat, and of course things are going to last a lot longer. And then of course if you look deeper inside, you'll see that there's a lot of chaff and leftover stuff that is sort of stuck to the edges. This is very common. As moisture is released, it does stick to the edges of the steel, completely normal. The best thing to do is to be able to clean it without messing up too much, and as you can see, it's very simple to do with this roaster. So with a quick little wipe inside, we're ready to put this thing back together. Before I do that, I'm just going to show you a couple of little features inside as well. So as you can see inside the roaster, right at the back there are 2 temperature probes. The one at the top is your drum temperature, and then the one at the bottom is your bean temperature. So on the screen at all times you'll see 2 different temperatures. Your drum temperature is how hot the drum is, thanks to the element up in the top left hand corner, and then at the bottom is your bean temperature. So obviously gravity is pushing the beans towards the bottom constantly, and it's giving a very accurate and precise measurement at all times. So that's enough of the mechanical stuff. Let's get this thing back together, get it warming up, and we're going to go through a couple of little specs and how to use this thing. So within a couple of minutes and the supplied tool, you can pull this thing apart, clean it, put it back together really easily. Of course, make sure you do it when it's cold and switched off. And before we move on to the next spot, there on the back of the roaster there is a little catch where you can catch the chaff in the excess, and you actually have the ability to add a hose as well, like I've done to the Kaleido, so that if you want an exhaust you can definitely run one, as I don't want all the smoke and chaff and stuff inside my garage. But that's enough of that. Let's switch this thing on, hook the Wi-Fi back up, and then we'll get stuck into it. So it's super simple to hook it up. Obviously you need to be on a device that's only connected to this machine through the Wi-Fi, which I'm using this tablet with a very broken screen because that's all I have at the moment, but that's fine. Because if you're using your phone and you close the app, you can certainly have some issues there, which is one of the little things that I could pick on with this, as you do need to be connected to something to turn it on. But you can also use Artisan, which in my opinion is the superior way to roast. You can share profiles a lot easier. Even though you can share profiles on this, there's obviously a lot more people using Artisan than this app. So if that is a feature you're interested in, absolutely you can hook it up and go and check that out because it's the superior way to roast. But if you are using the app, there's a really simple way to use it. Go into your profiles, and there are some preloaded profiles that the guys have supplied. And we're just going to do a basic light roast on this. So we're going to aim for 6 minutes 32 and 202.5 degrees Celsius drop temperature. It's as simple as clicking that on. We're going to go to auto roast, and there is the option to have auto repeat profile, which is your PID, or you can have an auto repeat recipe. Now I would recommend just leave it on the PID as it works perfectly fine. Now if this is something you want to do an experiment with, absolutely try both, see what works for you depending on what you're trying to aim for. So let's get this thing warmed up. So as you can probably hear, it's now turned on. You should be able to see the heat coming from the window, and you're able to see the entire time what's happening inside. Nice big window. There's no little inspection thing because you don't need it. It is pretty good. You can definitely see in there. And depending on the profile you've chosen, this will give you a balanced preheat, or it does give you a rapid preheat. I like to do the balanced preheating as I want the whole thing to have a nice big heat soak, ensure that it holds temperature the moment I drop beans in. Now while it's heating up, I'm going to explain what we're using and what we're aiming for. So this is 300 grams exactly of an Antigua Catuai. You can pronounce it however you like, that's how I pronounce it. Now, if you're new to roasting, which this roaster is aimed at new roasters, we'll explain more of that shortly, you might not be aware that 300 grams of beans going in will not be 300 grams coming out. You're probably going to lose about 15% of that weight with moisture, etc. And the beans will expand, so you'll end up with a bigger bean. So just a couple of things to keep in mind if you're looking for storage, etc. Now, I have seen people load green bean into this while preheating, waiting for it to happen. I wouldn't recommend doing that, as you're going to start adding heat to the green beans, essentially starting the roast, which means the next time you do it, it won't be exactly the same. So keep them aside in a tray, in a bowl, whatever you're using, that's perfectly fine. Just keep them in a nice, cool state. Now, speaking of cool, this does actually have the option, which I think it should be standard to come with this, is a cooling tray. So there's a separate item that you can use as a cooling tray, because the moment you finish roasting, you want to get it into a cooling tray and cool it immediately to stop the roasting process and to make sure that you have consistency. Because if you're cooling it at a different rate, you're going to get a different roast profile. So as you can hear, we're ready for some beans. We're going to pop them in to the hopper. Make sure there's none behind the slot here. I'll explain why shortly. Pop the lid on. The moment we open this, the tablet goes into roasting mode. We close it and we're off. So that is your green bean in there, roasting away nice and slowly. So as you can see, this line at the bottom, the green line that it's moving is your exact bean temperature, and the red line is your exact drum temperature. Please keep in mind that most of the time, the first roast will be a little bit inconsistent, especially if you just jump straight in and start roasting. I like to give them a really good heat soak. Typically I'll do that for 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how much of a rush I'm in. And if you look down the bottom here, there are quite a few things you can adjust on the flow. So you can adjust your fan, which is essentially your exhaust, and you hear it slow down there. So these are all things you can change along the way. We're not going to worry too much about helping you build profiles, as there are so many variables to this, and that's really up to you. And while you're roasting, don't just walk away and assume it'll be okay. And grab yourself a fire extinguisher. You can't be too safe, especially if this is in your home. Now, one of the really cool features of this is it does have auto crack detection. So the moment your bean starts to have its first crack, it starts counting. Now, the first one, in my opinion, is the most important one. After that, it just keeps counting how many times a bean is cracking, which doesn't really make sense. You kind of just want to know your first crack and your second crack, which is going to determine essentially how light or dark your roast is. Now, we have this set with this profile to stop roasting at 202.5 degrees Celsius, and that is going to be your bean temperature. So we're not too far off now. We're at 188.7 and climbing rapidly. When it gets to the correct temperature, we're going to switch on the cooling tray, get that ready, and we're going to open the door and it's going to drop straight into this drawer right here. So as you guys can hear, it's cracking and the auto crack sensor is going off. And we're almost at the temperature. So let's switch on the fan. And then we're ready to drop. Now pay close attention and make sure that all of the beans have escaped. Otherwise they will end up in the next roast and they will be very much over roasted. Now the moment you've got them all out, pull out the drawer, straight into the cooling tray. And then I have something, it does come with one, but I already have my own, a little wooden spoon, just to help move them around. Once you've finished roasting, it takes you to this window where you can have a look at your profile. So you can see exactly what's happened, what the profile did, where we sort of hit goal temperatures, where we hit first crack, etc. Once you've finished roasting, I like to leave the door open. It's going to help it cool down slightly quicker, and the roaster will switch itself off, including the fan and the drum, once it goes below 100 degrees Celsius. Once that happens, you can switch it off. You're ready to go. And of course, run that fan with the cooling tray until they are nice and cool. You can certainly touch them and hold them without any heat. Once they're at that level, put them into your bag or your storage canister, whatever it is you want to do. Keep in mind, you probably want to age those beans depending on how dark you roasted. That's a whole other conversation. I've done videos on that stuff before, so we won't get stuck too much into that. Alright, now that you can hear me properly, this is that current roast. Now, this is certainly not a high quality bean. I just wanted to use it for this test. But I'm going to grab a batch of coffee that I did recently that was absolutely perfect on the same profile, much better quality bean. Come and check this out. So, same roast profile, obviously a much better quality bean. Much more consistency. They are almost all identical, which actually really surprised me. Again, very light roast. It's what I want to drink. Perfectly fine. I've done all the way up to super dark roasts where they're undrinkable in my opinion, and the consistency is just as good as long as you're using a quality bean. So before I get stuck into anything that I want to talk about that's potentially negative about this, I do just want to run you through some of the specs as such. So the first thing is it is an infrared electric drum roaster, which means it's going to give you fairly consistent heat. It's not relying on too many consistencies. It's not relying on the air trying to move it. A drum roaster, in my opinion, is the right way to do it, as that's the same as what all of the big boy roasters do, like we use over at the roastery. Now, this roaster will do anywhere between 100 grams and 300 grams of coffee. You could probably push it over 300 if you really had to, but anything under 100, I'd find it really hard to get a nice consistent coffee, as there's just not enough volume there to distribute that heat evenly without burning things. Now, what you just witnessed was an automatic roast, so I didn't touch anything. Well, I did move the fan once just to show you, but you can move all of those variables. So you can change the fan speed, you can obviously change the heat being pushed into the beans, and a few other factors as well. And like I said, using Artisan, you'll get even more control and you'll actually get a better idea as to what exactly happened, as it captures a lot more data as well. And there are sensors everywhere on this thing. If you open the door, it knows the door's open. If you open it and pull the tray out, it knows the tray's out. So it's very clever, and I do like the way that it's going. However, there's one little thing that caught me out, and I actually thought that this thing wasn't working at all. So sit tight for that one, because we are going to talk about some of the things that I don't love about this. but they're fixable. So I think I've pointed out a lot of the things that I do like about this. The fact that it's made in Taiwan is great in comparison to China, where a lot of them are made. And it does roast coffee perfectly fine, especially if you use good quality green bean. I think the best thing about this is the fact that it is very easy to use. Now, what I mean by that is if you're a beginner roaster, which this is aimed at due to its price point, you can switch it on, hook up to the app, and roast coffee. It's going to do a lot of the work for you and kind of teach you how to roast coffee. If we were to compare to something like the Kaleido, this was not an easy thing to learn how to use, and I know how to roast coffee. I've used IMFs, I've used a whole bunch of other things. So if you want something you can switch on and roast coffee, this is a great option. Now there are two things that I want to point out that I don't love about this. Now one of them they have kind of rectified, sort of. The fact that the cooling tray is completely separate. It's a great option because it does let me use it for other roasters as well. However, it just feels like an afterthought because, like I said, you want to stop that roast as quick as possible once you get to your bean temperature goal. However, you're dropping it into the tray, which is holding heat, it's absorbing heat, and it's not really stopping the roast. Once all the beans are dropped out, then you can transfer it into the cooling tray, which is fine, it's fantastic, but it is leaving a little bit of room for error there. Now, like I said, this is a home roaster. I don't think most people are going to notice the difference between roasts. And I doubt you're going to have the same 10, 20, 60 kilos of coffee going through the one roaster and feeling any difference. You're probably going to be experimenting with a couple of 100 grams of coffee at a time. So you might not even notice that. Now the second issue I have with this roaster is probably something that's going to be rectified by the time you get one. I've actually pointed this potential issue out to the company and I'm sure they're working on a solution, or just don't do the same thing that I did and you'll be perfectly fine. Let me explain. So when you open this little switch here, you slide it back and the coffee will fall into the roaster. When that happens, it's hitting a button telling it that the hopper is open, and then you close it. Now, what happened is I had been pouring beans in and a little green bean had fallen in behind. So when I pushed it back, it wasn't clicking the button. It wasn't quite enough room in there and it was jammed. So that's on me as much as it is on the design, because that's very close to the hopper, which means that could happen to absolutely anyone. I actually thought the roaster was faulty, or there was an electrical issue, or the sensor was gone, but it turns out I'm an idiot and I just didn't see that it was stuck in there. So easy fix, I popped it out of there and we were good to go. Now the main issue I find with this design is that if a green bean does get jammed right under there, as you can see it's definitely possible, and then slowly going to roast between each batch, and eventually it's probably going to catch on fire. Not ideal, however, I feel like there's a very easy fix to this problem. Something as simple like some pieces of plastic you would see on like an automatic gear shifter. Anyway, it's not up to me to fix it, it's just my job to share with you guys my opinion and a couple of little things that I have noticed along the way. But long story short, do I like it? Yeah, I do. I really do. Now, I am someone who's extremely technical with everything I do. I want as much data as possible and I want as much consistency as possible. This isn't necessarily aimed at that, but it doesn't have to be. This is aimed at someone who has been using a bread maker to roast coffee with and they're looking to step it up. Definitely a step up, definitely going to give you a better quality coffee and a more consistent coffee. So, depending on when you're watching this, make sure you click the link. It's going to take you to the Kickstarter page where you can order yours. There's obviously going to be some early bird pricing on these, so make sure you get over there quick, check them out before they all run out, and then you'll have to pay full retail for one. And depending on where you are in the world, if you're a roaster and you're after some green bean, make sure you hit me up, because whether I can't help you with it, I definitely know someone that can. All over the world, we've got some really cool connections for the right people. But for now guys, that is my review on the BeanGo Cube X Coffee Roaster. Please consider clicking that subscribe button, click the like button. I'd really appreciate that. That really helps spread the word, get my videos out there, and we can keep kicking on with more videos. Thanks so much for watching guys, have yourselves a great day and happy roasting.